In this video, I'm going to be going through how to fill out an exclusive right of sale listing agreement transaction broker, and I'm also going to cover the differences between this listing agreement and the other listing agreement, which is the exclusive right of sale listing agreement with consent to transition to transaction broker. So I'm going to talk about those two forms, briefly cover agency and the difference between those two forms, and then I'm going to completely go through filling out that exclusive right of sale listing agreement. And this 7 to 9 minute video is going to replace probably a 4-hour class that you would go to at your brokerage. We are in SkySlope right now, which is EXP's programs that they use for sending out all of our documents and getting signatures and uploading all of our documents for compliance. And right now we're looking at the exclusive right of sale listing agreement transaction broker, and I have the other one right here, exclusive right of sale listing agreement with consent to transition to transaction broker. And real quickly, I'm just going to scroll down to the difference. You go down right here to section 10, brokerage relationship. This is the transaction broker listing agreement. Section 10, broker will act as a transaction broker. That is telling you the type of agency that you have, that this agreement gives you and the client. Then if you go to the other listing agreement, which is the consent to transition, scroll down to section 10, which is the agency, and you have a single agent notice, and then you have a consent to transition to a transaction broker. In the beginning, you start out as a single agent, and then you have the opportunity to go to a transaction broker if you need to. That consent to transition to the transaction broker would apply in two situations. Either a buyer contacts you directly and wants to purchase that listing, then you would represent both parties and act as a transaction broker. The other possibility is, say a buyer's agent comes and they bring a buyer that wants to purchase your listing, and they are the same brokerage as you. So in my case, it would be EXP. So if another EXP agent shows up and has a buyer that wants to purchase my listing, now we work for the same brokerage, and these contracts are not between me specifically or you specifically and the client. They're actually between the broker. We are just representatives of the broker. So now that broker is actually going to be the middleman between those two people, and the agents are going to be representatives of the broker. If you take a look at this listing agreement, it shows you the duties of a single agent and the duties of a transaction broker. If you look here, you have dealing fairly and honesty, loyalty, confidentiality, obedience, full disclosure, accounting. So that's for a single agent. So in a transaction broker, you have dealing fairly and honestly, accounting for all funds, using skill, diligence in the transaction, disclosing all known facts, limited confidentiality, presenting all counteroffers. Almost the same. What you don't have is loyalty, full confidentiality, and obedience. That is going to be specific to a single agent. Essentially, as a single agent, you are acting as a fiduciary, looking purely out for the best interest of that client. That means you're going to do everything in your power to get that one specific person the best deal. You're not going to let anyone else know that they are going to take a potentially less deal. In a transaction broker situation, you're going to be professional, use your skill, care, diligence, but you are acting more loyal to the transaction itself and not really specific to any one person. You're not supposed to favor either side in the transaction when you're acting as a transaction broker. Your duty really is just to push the transaction along and make sure it gets to closing. So the difference in these two listing agreements is that in the listing agreement transaction broker, you start out as the transaction broker, just trying to get the house to closing. Whereas the other listing agreement, you are a single agent first, looking out in the best interest of your client and what they want and their needs, and then possibly a transaction broker later on down the road. So now that we've gone through the difference, let's just go through and talk about how to fill out this contract. To find the seller's name, you can just look on the deed or on whatever appraiser website for the county that house is in. John Smith. Or let's see, if it's an LLC, that happens a lot. You can just do, whatever the name of the LLC is, 123 Houses LLC. If the home is owned in an LLC, you'll have the LLC name in that spot, and then just one of the authorized signers will be either initialing or signing, and that's totally fine. In the broker, you're just going to put your company name. So this one would be eXp Realty because it would be for me. For the starting date, you can really just put the date that you send the listing agreement out. For the termination date, you want to make sure that you talk to the seller. What I like to do is go 8 months forward and then go on to the first. That's just an easy way for me to always remember what my expiration date is going to be based off of whatever month the contract was signed in. So that way I don't have to go back and look at it. But you definitely want to talk to your seller about that. I like to extend it out just in case there's an extension or contract falls apart and we don't have to redo paperwork, everything, and make a new listing in the MLS. Street address, just go in here. Let's see, I'm just going to do 123 Main Street. Going to save. This sky slope thing for eXp is very cool because we can go over to this import MLS data button and we can actually click that and it will automatically pull in all the information from an active listing, and it will pre-fill out a bunch of fields, which is great. Legal description, this is also found on the appraiser website or on the deed. It's going to look either like lot and block or meets and bounds, so it'll be Lot 2, Block 19, Blue Sands subdivision, something like that. Or if it's meets and bounds, it'll be like starting at point whatever. Here, let me just pull up a meets and bounds one for you real quick. This is an example of a meets and bounds legal description. It is going to look like a mess. This is how the surveyor would plot out the boundaries of a property. These are all directions. Okay, back to the form. Personal property, including appliances, I usually leave this blank because it is probably going to differ depending on the offer that comes in. So you really don't need to put anything there. Occupancy, put if the property is or is not occupied by a tenant. And then when the lease expires. Price is right here. It's just whatever price that you and the seller agree to list the house for. Here you can check the different types of financing. It doesn't really matter too much what you click here as long as the seller is okay with each type of financing. Just make sure that maybe they don't want to have anybody with an FHA or a VA loan. So again, it's just a conversation you want to have with your seller. There are some details in here for assuming the existing mortgage. I have not been able to find anyone who's successfully assumed a mortgage, so if you have, let me know down in the comments. Don't need to put anything here for closing costs. Again, that is going to differ depending on the offer that comes in, on whatever the purchase agreement is, so you can just leave that blank. If the seller wants you to keep their address hidden, you would check this box right here, this box of 58, so you would normally not check that box. If they don't want you to put the listing in MLS at all, you would check this box right here. That's not a very likely scenario, so there's a good chance you're not going to check that box. Make sure sellers get initials here regardless. You do want to check all three of these boxes right here. This is the box that says you're allowed to use lock boxes to let people show. This one is that you will withhold all offers once the seller accepts a property. If you keep telling them about new offers that come in after you go under contract, you're really setting the seller up for just an emotional roller coaster and a stressful time. So it's best just not to do that. In this box right here, to check this box to withhold all verbal offers, again, that is also protecting the seller in a case of emotional roller coaster. You have a duty to present all offers to your seller. So if somebody says, well, I want to pay $100K over asking, that's kind of a verbal offer, and you kind of have a duty to tell your seller about that. It's at least a gray area, unless you check this little box that says you can withhold all verbal offers. Then in that scenario, if verbal comes in, what you want to say is you tell that buyer's agent, say, hey, I hear your verbal offer. Seller just wants written offer, so go ahead and get it up on a contract and email it over to me, and then we will talk. Chances are these two boxes on 80 and 82, you're not going to check those, so just leave them. This spot on line 102, making material facts known that might affect value. If there is anything that applies, you want to, I guess, put them on that line to cover your own butt, but hopefully you're going to have them fill out a seller's disclosure, and that is going to really take care of that. I have never written anything on this line, so there's a good chance you won't have to either. Compensation. So this is seller will compensate broker. So if you're kind of new to this, the listing side sets the commission for the entire transaction. So this spot right here, if you do a 6% or you do a 5%, that is going to be the commission for the entire transaction. Listing agent and buyer's agent. Here you have options and leases. Probably not going to use those. There's a good chance that you're just going to be using a percentage-based listing rate, so you'd put that there. These other boxes, you can leave them blank. This section right here, section D, starting on line 118, this is like the broker's protection. Basically, if the seller tries to back out of an offer that comes in while you're the listing agent and then they cancel with you and try to go with somebody else and end up selling the house, this kind of protects you in case something like that happens, some sort of fishiness. I normally just put 60 days in here. Fortunately, I have not had an issue like that come up. Retained deposits, this is going to be the percentage of the EMD that you are saying you're going to take. Should the buyer default on the contract and the buyer loses their EMD, some of that's going to go to the seller. I always take 0 here just because that's just what I do. So if you want a percentage of that EMD because you think that you're owed it, that's what you would put right there. This section here is what you are going to give the buyer's agent if they bring you a buyer that purchases your listing. So the section right here, let's say in this example, we are doing a 5% total listing and we're going to be splitting the commission 50-50. So what we do is check this box and go 2.5 and then check this box and go 2.5. Check this box, 2.5. So this is the commission that we'd be giving to the buyer's agent. Total transaction is up here. Buyer's agent percentage is right here. So again, this is not extra. This comes out of this 5% right here. Section 10, we already talked about this quite a bit. This is the brokerage relationship. And in this contract, we are acting as a transaction broker. Conditional termination, this is basically the cancellation fee. You can put anything in here if you'd like. So maybe you have a $400 cancellation fee just in case they cancel. You want to get compensated for pictures. My opinion, I don't charge a cancellation fee because I feel like I've only done my job if it closes. So that's sales, baby. That's the way she goes. Section 12 just talks about dispute resolution, what will happen in the event that somebody defaults on the contract and there's a dispute over the EMD. This goes in here. You just have to get them to initial. You have to initial, and your broker has to initial as well. Additional terms, you can have pretty much anything in there. If your legal description is too long, you can go up here to the top and say, in legal description, say, see additional comments in there, and just put in the additional terms, the legal description. And make sure they sign, and you want to sign or get your broker to sign. That's it. If you like the video, make sure you press thumbs up. Have a great one.